grabbed their gear and they headed down to the lake. Everything seemed to be going well until they noticed a stranger approaching them. The three of them did not return back to their homes that evening. Their families became very worried and they went to go and look for them. The very next day, a maintenance worker stumbled upon something horrific. The employee found Suzanne's fully exposed body lying in the bushes just off of the path. Nearby was a pair of shorts and undergarments, and they were later identified as belonging to Gina. But where was Gina? The area ended up being taped off and searched very thoroughly by the local authorities, but there were still no signs of Gina or Brian anywhere. The families were, as you can imagine, holding out hope that the other two would be found, all while being devastated and panicking in the way that Suzanne was found. However, 5 days later, Brian and Gina's bodies were found in a canal just outside of Ore City, which was about 40 miles away from Lake Hawkins, where the group was hanging out the day that they all went missing. The medical examiner determined that Suzanne had multiple blows to the face and had actually been strangled with her own underwear. They also found that she had endured unimaginable things and physical torture, especially to her lower body region. The investigators interviewed witnesses who had been on that lake that day, and one witness said that they saw a bushy-haired man covered in tattoos. Remember, this is the 1980s too, okay? Covered in tattoos, hanging around the lake that Sunday evening. According to that witness, the tattoos on this man stood out to them because he had several satanic symbols and imagery and distorted looking demonic faces tattooed on different parts of his body. And on his chest was a tattoo that said "Lonesome Loner." As they continued to investigate, they found a couple that said that they had been approached around 7:30 p.m. that evening by a guy with a firearm. And they described the guy as having big hair and that he demanded them to give him money. When this couple told this bushy-haired man that they didn't have any money, the man apparently threatened to take the woman instead. The boyfriend of this woman offered the man a beer, which they said seemed to calm him down enough for the couple to quickly jump in their car and leave. They would go on to tell the investigator that they then saw this man get into a blue and white Ford Bronco. They gave investigators the license plate number, and they also said that they saw the same tattoos as the last witness and the lonesome loner on his chest. The following day, on Tuesday, a police officer saw, what do you know, a blue Bronco that matched the description driving down the road, so he ended up pulling the person over. When they pulled the person over, driving it was a man who fit the description that the witnesses gave. It was a 38-year-old man named Jerry McFadden. They immediately took him into questioning. He went by Jerry, but when he was brought into the police station, he asked everyone to call him Animal. He did, however, tell the investigators that he frequently camped at this Lake Hawkins, but he said that he never saw the three victims at the lake that day. The investigators went on to charge him anyways, and Jerry was officially charged for the killing, the SA, and the murder of Suzanne because they found personal of his DNA, if you know what I mean, stains that matched Jerry. They were found on Suzanne. And so the investigators believed that they had the best chance of getting Jerry convicted for at least for her murder, since there'd be no explanation for those bodily fluids to be found on Suzanne if he didn't do what was done to her. But because there wasn't a lot of physical evidence for Gina and Brian, because their bodies were so decomposed, the state chose not to press charges for them. And of course, their families were very disappointed, but the investigators made sure to let them know that they were going to do everything that they could to keep looking for enough evidence in order to charge him for that as well. Now, while he was in custody, before the trial happened, Jerry managed to escape, okay? So, again, small town, everybody knows everybody. This is a horrific scene. This is this three young people, bright futures, good kids, going to the point where all the young adults hang out at, safe place, They've got him locked up. The town feels like, whew, Okay, we're going to get justice. And then he escapes. You want to talk about people locking their doors and their car doors then? On July 9th of 1986, Jerry took a 24-year-old female dispatcher hostage and used her as a human shield as he was escaping. He ended up forcing this young woman into her car and they took off. Eventually, because it was so hot outside, the car ended up overheating and it broke down on the side of the road. And so then Jerry had no choice but to start walking. Him and the woman that he had took eventually hopped onto a boxcar on a train. And you can only imagine what she's thinking at this point. Like, it is not... She's thinking probably the worst, okay? She ended up being held hostage for a total of 16 hours, which probably felt like 16 years to her, before she was able to escape from him in this boxcar. This began the largest manhunt in the history of Texas. Thousands of people were searching for this guy, Jerry. The next day in Big Sandy, Texas, law enforcement officials had Jerry completely surrounded in an abandoned house where they were able to recapture Jerry and put him back into custody. Now, Jerry's trial began in the summer of 1987. After 2 weeks of testimony, it only took the jury 35 minutes to convict him. In July of 1987, a judge sentenced Jerry to the death penalty by lethal injection. And on October 14th of 1999, Jerry was put to death.